All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to lesson 2 of YBTJ. And I know what you're thinking. What's YBTJ? The answer is, you be the judge. My friends, this course is all about applied Talmud study. Our last course, Decoding the Talmud, was all about the history, the composition, the story behind the making of the Talmud, a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at what the Talmud's all about. But this course is all about applying Talmudic reasoning, Talmudic rulings to real cases that came before real courts. Tonight, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 7 cases that we're going to explore. Real cases, real life examples, many of which came before the courts, and we're going to address the core question. When it comes to your money or my life, which one supersedes the other? I know what you're thinking. What do you mean? Life or money? Life or property? Of course life is more important. Slow it down. We're going to go through this tonight. In order to get into this, we're going to start with some case studies. These are case studies ripped from the headlines. I didn't say today's headlines because a lot of these cases actually date back many, many years. I think the reason for this, I really tried to find modern case studies on this. I think because it's so well established, these principles are so well established in the U.S. courts, they don't really come up anymore. I mean, if they come up, they get decided right away because there's so many precedents for this. So let's pass these around. These are before we get into the booklets, we're going to do the case study. So take and then pass back. And Toba and Barry, I'll ask you as well. Please take and just pass straight back. Take across and pass back. Okay. Make sure. Does Barry have? Here. Okay. You got this? Perfect. Love it. All right. I'm going to read these case studies. Y'all get comfortable. It's story time. Oh, but not too comfortable. Oh, don't get too comfortable, because after each case, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What do you think the ruling should be? Because, as the course suggests, you be the judge. All right. First case takes us back to 1910. It was a great year. I'm kidding. I have no idea. 1910, Vincent versus Lake Erie Transportation Co. The storm came fast and hard. What had been a relatively calm afternoon in Duluth, Minnesota, turned into a violent squall. As dark clouds rolled in over Lake Superior, the winds howled, the waves churned, and before long, the lakefront was a scene of chaos. Docked at the pier was the Reeves, the steamship owned by the Lake Erie Transportation Company, which had just finished. Unloading cargo. Normally, the ship would have departed immediately, but the storm struck before it could safely leave the harbor. Just explain, because it's important that we get the details. This ship, owned by the Lake Erie Transportation Company, right, came in, docked on Lake Superior, unloaded its cargo, and was set to pull out. Well, guess what? A storm was a-brewing. Let's continue. As the weather worsened, the ship's crew had a critical decision to make. If they untied from the dock, as they were scheduled to do, the Reeves, that was the ship, risked being tossed into the lake, battered by waves, or even running aground, which, by the way, would not only risk damage to the ship, but also to the people on the ship. Let's continue. Known as the crew, I believe. The safest option for the ship and its crew, there you go, was to stay moored at the dock and reinforce the ropes to keep it from breaking loose. Remember, the ship had business being there to unload, and then it was meant to depart. They don't want to go. Why? What's going to happen? We're going to be in the middle of the lake when all this goes down. They double down. Let's keep on going. Hour after hour, the storm raged on. The waves slammed the Reeves against the dock repeatedly. And though the ship survived unscathed, the same could not be said for the dock itself. By the time the storm passed, Vincent, the dock's owner, was left surveying the damage. Wooden planks shattered, posts splintered, and much of the structure weakened. Vincent believed, the owner of the dock believed, the damage was not just the result of the storm, it was the direct result of the ship staying tied up. He argued that if the crew had left as was the plan. When the weather turned bad, his dock would not have been ruined. The Lake Erie Transportation Company, however, saw things differently. They had acted out of necessity, protecting their vessel and crew from disaster. Could they really be blamed for something they had no control over? And so the case went to court. Should the ship's owners be held responsible for the destruction of the dock, or was this simply an unavoidable consequence of a brutal storm? My friends, who needs court when we have judges like y'all? Look at this.
Where's the
Look at this. What a great collection of judges. We have almost a Sanhedrin. Now, Sanhedrin was like the big Sanhedrin was like 70, 71 judges. 70 judges. If they needed an extra one to break a tie, they brought in the 71st judge. The minor Sanhedrin was 23. We're almost there. You're bringing a few more for to be matched from the 23. But the question on the table, and we're going to vote now, and then I'll take explanations later. Soon. The vote now. Here's the question. We have two parties, dock owner and the shipping company. Vincent versus Lake Erie Transportation Company. The ship battered the dock. And the dock owner said, you weren't even supposed to be here. Right. I appreciate your concern over your ship and your crew, but at my expense. And so you're the judge. Let's say whatever, I'm not even going to give a number, whatever the damage to the dock is. Do you believe, raise of hand if you do, that the Lake Erie Transportation Company should be on the hook? Maybe the captain hook, for the damage. Do you believe they should be on the hook for the damage? Yes. Okay. All right. Many hands going up. Good to see you. We put a chair just to make things a little bit more complicated. All right. So, okay, good. We had a lot of hands go up. Do you believe that the Lake Erie Transportation Company should not be held liable for the damage to the dock? All right, we got a few hands up. We got some hands up. Now let's get into explanation.
Could I just ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Doesn't anybody have insurance?
Nah, insurance. No one's dealing with insurance. Listen, I don't know about the insurance.
Not in 1910. That would have been a very rare thing.
Yeah, 1910. And look, the honest truth is insurance is the wild card, meaning it's whatever it covers, you pay extra to get it, whatever. We're talking about I'm going to use some Hebrew terms, the etzem din, like the core law. Forget insurance. Insurance is like an umbrella on top. The core law, the core liability. Are you liable in such a case? The Lake Erie Company is saying, we've got to protect our crew. On a lesser degree to protect our ship. We had to, for the safety of the crew, we had to keep everything tied down. With sincere apologies, owner of the deck. And the deck owner said, the dock owner says, to quote Shtisel, thank you for your words of consolation, but I would also like a check to cover my dock. Okay, so we already took a poll. If you believed, and still do, that the Lake Erie Transportation Company should be on the hook for the damages, explain your rationale. Go.
Perhaps they could have done something to prevent the ship from harming them.
Oh, maybe they should have done more. Good. What else? Why should they be on the hook for the damage? Battering the deck, hour after hour. Go. Yeah.
It's a business transaction. They probably paid to use the deck, and
you paid for the dock.
Using the dock, then
you're liable. Good.
It's not like the fact that they were trying to protect their boat needs to come on the account of the dock owner.
Right. I'm smiling because I just got reminded. I reminded myself. One time I captained the ship. It was like a pontoon in Lake. No, the other one. Oconee. Lake Oconee. It was, I think, like more available and less expensive. Anyway, so Lake Oconee. So I'm like pulling. I'm like, we take the kids out. Great time. I don't know. It's like a few years ago. And I'm like captaining this puppy back in. And the guy's like, all right, come on, bring it in. And I'm like, at some point, I'm like, I don't like, it's not coming in straight. I'm like, I don't have this. The guy jumps on, he parks it for me. Anyway, but you're right. What if you smash a dock? You should conceptually be held liable. Okay. What else? Any other rationales? Oh, you're saying act of God. Good. So that's the other side. All right, hold on. Yeah.
I think they did what's right to save their life, but they still have to pay for what they did.
Love that. So you're saying there's two separate things. You can save your life, but you might also get a bill in the mail. Okay, good. All right. What's the other side? The other side would say that no, they're not. There's no liability, and you articulated it, David, by saying act of God. It's not the ship's fault.
I say it's an act of God too.
Act of God.
It'd be hard to differentiate what's the storm or them tied up to the contribution each, so.
Right.
I would say it's an act of God.
You would say it's a wash. Kidding. You would say just that that's it. It's over. All right. Any other rationales? You guys also have. Right. What? Hold on one second, Phil.
It's similar in a way to, let's say you have a flight.
Yeah.
And the plane, cannot take off because of the weather.
Yes.
Because you're not gonna get on the flight, you're gonna miss
Ah.
an important thing that's gonna cost you a lot of money. But they have to think about the safety of the passengers first.
You say there's no liability if the flight doesn't take off and you miss your meeting. Whatever. It is what it is. David, jump in.
I was just going to say that to me, the operative issue is whether the storm hit before the ship could leave safely or not. In other words, that seems to be the fact issue between the
Timeline.
two parties. Is that if they could have untied safely before the storm struck, then that's one thing. But if they couldn't, then I think,
Act of God.
yeah.
All right. David, as official legal counsel of the Torah Center, I think I like that. So we have a lot of we have some different perspectives. We're going to get back to it at some point later on in the lesson. On to case study number 2. If you think case study 1 was exciting, wait till you get to the story in San Francisco. Oh, baby. Does San Francisco have a nickname? Not brotherly love. All right. Anyway, burning down a house to save a city. Sirocco versus Geary. 1853, my friends. That was a long time ago. 1853. The fire spread faster than anyone expected by the time it reached Jose Sirocco's neighborhood. In San Francisco, flames had already swallowed dozens of buildings, turning them into smoldering ruins. Thick black smoke filled the air, and the streets were a chaotic mess of people scrambling to save whatever they could. Sirocco's house was still standing, but the fire was getting dangerously close. Frantically, he rushed inside to gather his belongings, determined to save as much as possible before the flames arrived. But just as he was carrying his things to safety, city officials made a devastating decision. Under orders from Mayor John Geary, the demolition crew arrived and quickly began tearing Sirocco's house down, not because it was already on fire, but because it stood in the path of the flames. The city's plan was simple: destroy buildings ahead of the fire's advance to create a fire break, stopping it from spreading further. It was a desperate move, but one that had been used in past disasters. Sirocco, however, was outraged. He had precious time left to save his possessions, but the city's decision robbed him of that chance. As he watched his house collapse under the hands of the demolition crew, he demanded compensation for his loss. The city, however, saw it differently. This wasn't about one man's property. It was about the safety of the entire community. If they hesitated, if they allowed the fire to continue unchecked, countless other homes and businesses would be lost, could be lost. Hard choices had to be made, and the destruction of Sirocco's home was, in their view, an unfortunate but necessary sacrifice. But should the city be allowed to destroy a man's home without paying him back for what was lost? Was this an act of necessary leadership or an unjust taking of private property? The courts would have to decide, or y'all be the judge. You be the judge. In the South, all y'all be the judge. So now we ask the question, as we asked before. I hope you've been thinking about it, as I have. If this is a case that's come before your bench, and you have the gavel and the black robe, and you're in charge because you are the judge, and you are now ruling on this case, the homeowner versus the mayor, essentially the individual versus the government. Do you believe the city of San Francisco, or the officials that made the call, should be on the hook for this man's house? If you say yes, raise your hand. We're split. If you say, assuming that everyone, if you say no, there is no liability, raise your hand. All right. We're pretty much split. Let's take some rationales. If you said that they are liable for the destruction of the home, why say you?
Same reason with the last case.
Yes.
It was necessary, but that doesn't mean that the person's not compensated.
Good. You're saying it's necessary, but pay up.
If that saved the whole neighborhood, then
Sorry, Mr. Sirocco. That's what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying city,
Oh, the city should pay.
it's necessary for the city to do it.
Sorry, city coffers.
Just like it was necessary for the boatmaid to stay on
Right.
the dock.
But they still have to pay for the destruction. If-
Still have to pay for it.
Okay. That's okay. Good. What else? Yeah. Me here.
I agree, and I also would further that, like, the fact that, like, if, like, nowadays, if the city wants to, like, build a sidewalk, they have to take the department to do that. They have to-
You're saying eminent domain. If you take some eminent domain action, you got to compensate.
They had to go and build it back up.
You want it? You want to take it? It's all yours. Here's the invoice. Okay.
I think it's a little bit different here because you're talking about saving lives compared to just property, taking a sidewalk or something like that. So it's not on the same level. And the difference I think between this and the other case is that you're saying this is a community decision, saving multiple lives here. It's not a decision of one person trying to protect his boat and his crew. So I think that the city, I mean,
There might be
yes,
more of a
in better
reason.
world, they would come to some sort of agreement. But if it needs to be a clear cut, then the city is doing what's for the greater good of the community and cannot be on the hook on this to pay everybody's house.
You would say, sorry, Mr. Sirocco, your house had to go. You might argue, you didn't say this, but I'm going to add some fuel to the fire. Anyway, but sorry, I had to do that. It was just right there. So like, just to say, maybe there's also the element of maybe his house would have been burned anyway, right? It was in the path. Seems like it was in the path of the fire. The city's taking it down preemptively to stop. You're saying that it's for the communal protection, for the greater good. So you're saying there's less, perhaps in this case, of a reason to hold the city liable than an individual that was, in its protecting its own interests, but at the expense of someone else. Yeah? Did I do that correctly? Well, you said it anyway. I can just, doesn't matter if I got it correctly because we all heard you anyway. So you got your thing in. I got my spill in. Everyone's happy. Good. What else? What other rationales? Any other rationales on the side of the city being liable? No, not liable. Well, you mentioned not liable yet.
The general concept of sovereign immunity.
Ooh.
You can't sue a government entity.
Opa. Sovereign immunity. You cannot. Is that a thing? All right.
I have
Okay. I don't know. Sovereign immunity, you're saying, is
Unless the government entity has liability.
interesting. Okay. What do you have, Barry? And you got hold above a comma. Hold above a comma. Mom, yeah, jump in.
I think that the city should pay him for his furniture.
Ah,
And because his house would have been destroyed probably anyway. by
but
the
he would have
fire.
had a chance maybe to rescue
Right,
his stuff, but
right.
they took. Okay, I hear that. It's a bit of a compromise. Nice. Okay, good. All right. Let's jump to the last one. Oh, who came up with these case studies? These are amazing because it presents a nice
Right.
yeah, of the various cases that kind of touch on the principles that we're going to address. Collateral damage when police break your door. Wegner versus Milwaukee Mutual Insurance Company, 1991. All right, now we're getting to the 90s. Penguins winning the Stanley Cup, 91, great year. I'm about to be bar mitzvah. All is well, I'm 12. Let's make this all about me for no reason. All right, let's go. All right. Thank you guys for indulging me in my trip down memory lane. 1991, Stranger Things was all the rage. All right, it started like something out of an action movie. A high-speed police chase through the streets of Minneapolis ended with the suspect ditching his car and sprinting toward a quiet residential neighborhood. Spotting an unlocked door, the suspect barged into the home of one Curtis Wegner. Seeking refuge, the police, hot on his heels, surrounded the house within minutes. What followed was a chaotic standoff. Officers, believing the suspect to be armed and dangerous, took no chances. They broke down doors, smashed windows, and fired tear gas canisters inside. The wall shook as police forced their way through, determined to bring the fugitive to justice. After a tense confrontation, The suspect was arrested. The neighborhood breathed a sigh of relief. That's what we call a pregnant pause. But Wagner was left with a house that looked like a war zone. His front door was shattered. His walls were scarred from impact. Furniture was destroyed, and debris littered the floors. It was as if a tornado had ripped through his home, but instead of nature, it was the work of law enforcement officers. Wagner turned to his insurance company, Milwaukee Mutual, expecting them to cover the damage. But to his shock, they refused. The damage, they argued, wasn't caused by a natural disaster or an accident. It was caused by the police. And if anyone should pay for it, they claimed, it should be the city. The city, however, had no intention of footing the bill. They argue that police officers need to act without hesitation when pursuing dangerous suspects. If they had to worry about lawsuits every time they broke down a door, public safety could be at risk. Now the case was in the hands of the courts. Should Wagner, an innocent homeowner, have to pay for the destruction of his own house? Or should the city take responsibility for the damage caused in the line of duty? Good case.
I have intimate,
Huh?
I have intimate
No.
with this knowledge of this case. We had a house in one of our property management years ago.
Yeah.
Decatur.
Yeah.
One day we come and like the neighbor calls and said the house is vacant. We come in, the door is broken, the walls are busted, the floor is busted, whatever. We call the police like, yeah, we know there was a drug bust here. We were looking for drugs. They busted everything, walls, floors, whatever. We got 0 from the insurance and 0 from the police.
What? Yeah. So this is a real case.
Good case.
I mean, BTD have of it.
They were like, this is
Wait,
part of the work. We were
Ari,
like, drug bust, we're not liable to anything.
That's
And the
unbelievable.
insurance did not cover anything either.
That's unbelievable.
It's not an act of God. It's not.
Not an accident, not an act of God, none of this, none of that. The
Your
police.
fault that you had criminals in the
Did
house.
you go to the police?
Absolutely.
What they say?
This is part of our job. No, we're not covered.
That's what they said here in this case. What year was this?
I don't know, during the Great Recession, 2008,
Eight,
something like
8, 9,
that.
10.
15 years ago.
Wait, what was the case?
He had a property, a debt at a property, and there was one day. And there was a drug bust that happened for one of the rent,
Drugs.
and they destroyed the place. He got no money from the insurance and no money from the city it.
Ah,
because of the insurance policy. You have to get the special rider that covers the. Yeah. All right. So how do we feel about this? Sounds like we kind of know how the law might go, right? How the laws might fall, maybe if that's indicative of how it's typically done. But let's ask, if you were in charge, if you were the judge or writing the laws, do you think that the city, on behalf of the police, should be liable in this case? Raise your hand.
how do we
A few.
know?
Do you believe that the city should not be liable? Okay.
What about the third option?
Yeah, which is
The insurance company should be liable.
okay.
I agree. The insurance company should be liable.
Who's
Right.
insurance? Your insurance or the city's insurance?
The city's insurance.
I feel like that's what's happening. The one insurance is saying, well, I'm not taking it. The other one says, I'm not taking it. And then no one's taking it. And meanwhile, you're stuck with it. Right? All right. So here's the deal. I can tell you at the end of the class how the courts ruled in each of these 3 cases. And I will if you want. But what's the point of today's class is to get these types of questions percolating in our mind. And then we're going to hit the Talmudic sources, because that's how we roll in You Be the Judge. We present real cases. We go into the Talmudic precedent. We try to apply it. And we're going to play this out. So let's take these case study handouts, put them to the side. And at this point, we're going to jump into our main handout. The main handout is the one that says, you be the judge, your money or my life. Okay? And what we're going to do is open up these booklets and turn to the second page where it says text number 1. What we're going to do here is present at the top 2 Talmudic passages. And I'm going to tell you from the get-go, these 2 Talmudic passages seem to be in contradiction to each other. I'm also going to say that tonight you're going to have to help up a little bit, because we're going to present a rule. We're going to present another rule that are going to appear contradictory. We're going to reconcile the contradiction, thus establishing the rule, then present 3 exceptions to the rule, and then we're going to analyze a bunch of case studies. Are you with me? One rule, a second rule, contradiction, reconciliation, 3 exceptions, application, nothing but net. I'm kidding. All right, you guys got it? Y'all with me? Barry, if you don't mind, please begin with text number 1. I need to preface this. The situation that we're about to read was a life-threatening emergency. Text number 1, Barry.
Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi were walking together. A ravenous hunger seized Rabbi. He seized the shepherd and devoured his meal.
So here, thank you. Here we have a story of 2 rabbis. And Rabbi Yehuda is seized with a ravenous hunger. And according to modern commentaries, they say, oh, what's the name of it? I had notes here somewhere. I don't know where they are now. Whatever. Hyper or hypo, what? Hypoglycemic. Okay. So it's a situation where, there they are. It's a situation where it can be life and death. And so he seizes the shepherd. No, he's not like cannibalism here. He grabbed the shepherd and then grabbed his lunch. Okay. He needed food. This guy had food. He basically took the food. Now, understand this. The Talmud doesn't follow this up by saying, and you know what? He was wrong. Or you know what? It was theft. You know what? He shouldn't have done that. There's no mention. The implication is that he acted correctly. Because the implication is in case of life and death versus property, what overrides the other? Life. Now we get to text number 2. Text number 2 is from Bava Kama, a different Masechta, a different tractate altogether. And here we begin with a story about King David. The first paragraph is a story from the book of Shmuel 2. The adventure continues. No, I'm kidding. The book of Samuel. And here the scripture tells us about a situation where David was dealing with some drama. Text number 2, Toba, please read.
David had a craving and said, if only someone could give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem, which is in the city gate. So the 3 mighty men of David broke into the camp of the Philistines and drew water from the well of Bethlehem, which is at the gate. And they carried it and brought it to David.
Now, I will tell you this. The truth is that the first paragraph that you just read is not really so relevant to the rest of it. The rest of it is really where the magic begins.
Rav Huna said, there were stacks of barley belonging to the Jews in which Philistines were hiding. David wanted to set fire to the stacks to root out the enemy. So he asked halakha guidance from the Sanhedrin as follows. Is it permissible to save oneself through the destruction of someone else's property? The Sanhedrin sent back to him the following decision. It is normally prohibited for a person to save himself through the destruction of someone else's property. But you are a king, and a king may break through fences around another's property to make a path for himself and his armies, and no one may protest against him. Thus, you are permitted to burn the stacks of barley.
So thank you. Let's break this down one piece at a time. Forget the first paragraph. Okay. Second paragraph is the key piece. So King David finds himself amongst unfriendly fire, let's say. And the enemy is hiding and he feels personally at risk. So his life is at risk. Maybe his men's life is at risk. Maybe there's not only him, but maybe there's a group of people whose lives are at risk. The Philistines, the Plishtim, are hiding in these huge stacks of barley, huge bundles and stacks. They're hiding behind them. And he needs to get the enemy, or else the enemy might get him. So he quickly texts. Sorry, this is a long time ago. WhatsApps. Kidding. He sends a message to the Sanhedrin. You know, when you have a legal when you have a question like this, you got to call the legal department. So he's got legal on speed dial. He gets a hold of the Sanhedrin, the high Jewish court, and he says, "Okay, what's the deal here? The stacks belong to other Jews, Jewish-owned stacks of food or barley. Can I burn them down in order to root out the enemy to protect life?" And they say to him, typically, if this were an ordinary person, you know what the answer is? No. But since you're a king, it's okay. Anybody find this Puzzling and or contradictory?
One set of laws for the king, another set of laws for the people.
Aside from that,
No, you're saving your life, and here suddenly you're not saving your life.
what's going on here? What's going on here? Suddenly, you're right. One question could be, why is the king treated differently? So that we'll deal with that. But what's the core ruling? If you're not a king, let's talk about if you're not a king and your life is at risk, you can't destroy property to save. Since when is property more important than life? That doesn't make any sense. And in text one, we said that when one rabbi was dangerously, sick and he had to have food, he was able to take food. So that's what I said. I'm going to present text one and then text two and raise the contradiction. Guess what? We're up to that stage of the conversation where I presented the contradiction. Text one implies that it's okay to steal to save a life, to destroy, damage, steal property to save a life. Text two implies only if you're the king. What's going on? What does that even mean? And if you're not the king, what? Someone else's stack of food comes before your life? How does that make any sense? So I'm going to give you, because we don't need to elaborate on the question, we just need to clarify and give the answer. The answer is fairly simple. The answer is the Sanhedrin wasn't saying, if you're an ordinary person, you cannot steal. Sorry, you cannot burn down the thing to save a life. Of course you can. But then you're going to be liable to pay. The king can do it without any liability. I'm going to reread text 2 where the Sanhedrin answers. You ready? Listen to my new reading. The Sanhedrin sent back to him the following decision. This is halfway through the second paragraph on the third page. Here's the reply of the Sanhedrin. It is normally prohibited for a person to save himself through the destruction of someone else's property without then paying for it afterwards. But you are a king, and a king may break through fences around another's property to make a path for himself and his armies, and no one may protest against him, even to ask for payment. You see the difference? The Sanhedrin is not saying only the king can destroy property to save a life. Sanhedrin is saying that only a king can destroy property to save a life and not be on the hook afterwards. So the commentaries put it in. It seems like, good question. It seems like, why didn't they say that clearly? It seems like it was so understood. Because when would we ever put barley in front of life? We would never prioritize, oh, you can't save that life. What about my barley? Your barley? Your barley. Barley is not important than life. Of course you can destroy the barley to save a life. Absolutely. But you have to pay for it. But a king, so King David wasn't asking the Senate from the beginning. His question wasn't life or barley. Obviously life. His question was, am I going to have to pay for it? And the Sanhedrin said an ordinary person is liable. A king is not. Now, why is it different? A king typically is acting in the national interest, right? In the national interest. Government, the kingdom, the army, which is protecting the entire nation, more existential. On that level, we're not going to get into the details of the individual laws. Reminiscent, if you will, we're not done yet, obviously, of case number 2 in San Francisco. You with me on this? When it's a bit of a larger picture at stake, at that point, we may not want to get into the nitty-gritty of, I owe you for your set of dishes that were destroyed. That conversation may not be happening. Getting back to this story, we now have a rule, having one case from the Talmud and a second case and a seeming contradiction, but then the reconciliation, we now have a little clarity. So let's establish what we know so far. What we know so far is that in case study text number 1, when the rabbi is walking down the street and he's like, I have to eat, I'm actually getting seriously ill, I must eat something, and he grabs someone else's food, what we know is that was allowed. 100% okay. We also know that in that case, would he be liable to pay him back for the food? 100% he would be liable to pay back. He would have to then reimburse the guy for the lunch. So imagine he took someone's $15 lunch. Guess what? Drop him $15 on the way out, and thank you very much. You saved my life. Here's reimbursement. The rule is you're allowed to destroy, steal, damage property, whatever it takes to save your life, and then you have to pay for it. That's the rule. The second rule that we learned is if you're the king, I'm sorry, let me position this as the exception to the rule. So the rule is you can damage, destroy, steal property to save your life, but you're gonna have to pay for it. That's the rule. Exception number one, if you're a king. If you're a king, then it's a little bit different.
So are the police like the king?
So let's hold off on the application because we're gonna still build this out. Let's take a look at text number 3. Please read text number 3. This is from Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. As you may know, the founder of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, wrote a version of the Code of Jewish Law, and this is where text number 3 comes from. And look, by the way, how he phrases text 3, because he phrases it with the caveat that we mentioned that it's only prohibited if you don't have intention to reimburse. Take it away.
It's prohibited to save oneself with someone else's money without intention of reimburse for the loss if one has the means to do so, as there is no duress in not paying, and one has the choice to reimburse the owner without subjecting oneself to danger.
So what it's saying is, in a moment of emergency, break the window, steal the car, grab the food, whatever you need to do, great. And when the emergency is over,
Pay the bill.
Pay the bill. Meaning, it's not like I had to, in the moment, maybe to save a life, I had to break down the door. I had to escape. I had to hotwire someone's car. Bad guy was coming. I had to steal your car. I was under duress. I had to go. And then afterwards, now you're not under duress, right? Okay, so pay up. Because when you're not under duress, now that's when the compensation comes in. So you can't say you're under duress the whole time forever. You're not under duress forever. In the moment of duress, you had to break the law. Now that the duress is over, make it right. Yeah.
So I have another example. I just wonder how, I think it's related to this. And it also related to what's called the Good Samaritan law.
Oh, that's going to be our second exception. Hold on. Actually, if it's about Good Samaritan, hold on, because up until now, this is a perfect segue, and then I'm going to ask you to share that. Up until now, we're talking about people saving their own lives. Text 1 was a rabbi who was seriously ill and needed food. Text 2 was King David was worried about his own life. Text 3 is prohibited to save oneself. What about someone who's not saving their own life, but someone who is the entire experience is about saving someone else's life? So instead of imagine a twist of text 1. Imagine if not, there are 2 rabbis walking down the street. That's not a joke. This is the story, right? One of them is seized with this dangerous hunger. And so he steals food. That was the case. Let's modify it. What happens if he didn't do anything? What happens if he God forbid, collapsed to the ground? And his friend, the other rabbi, grabbed someone else's food and fed it to this guy. Now the question is the other guy on the hook for the food, just like he would have been had he taken it? Now, on a simple level, you would say, yeah, why not? Text number 4. Bobby, please read text number 4, which would be on page 1, 2, 3, 4. Take it away.
Someone who is running away from a killer and broke another person's vessels while running is liable for those vessels. Someone who is pursuing a pursuer in an attempt to save the life of the pursued and cause damage to the vessels of the pursuer of life or anyone else's vessels is exempt from repayment. This is not based on strict legal principle. Rather, it was legislated by the sages for if we would hold a savior of life liable for the damages he may cause, no one would want to save lives.
Know what we call this? Thank you. Good Samaritan law, which means legally, again, let's go back to text 1. 2 rabbis, one of them gets really sick, he needs food. So if he steals someone's food, he's got to reimburse. But what if someone else steals the food to save the other guy's life? So it's interesting. This is from the Talmud, Bava Kama 117b. This is from Gemara. Talmud says that min hadin, based on strict legal principle, he should also have to reimburse. Both cases, you took someone else's food, but we're not going to hold you liable for it. We're going to override din. We, The law is overriding the law. We are the law and we're overriding the law. The law really should be, no matter who takes the stuff, steals, breaks, damages to save a life, no matter who does it, they should be liable. But we have another interest. You know, like when you're in charge of creating a legal system, or you're the bet-din, you can't think like this. You got to think a little bit bigger. You want to create a system that you're holding everyone to the minadin, you want to hold everyone to justice and be like, oh, you saved a life, here's your certificate and here's your bill. How many Good Samaritans are you going to have after them? So what we do is we suspend the law for the Good Samaritan, which then leads to an astonishing reality, which was text 4. If you're the one being chased by a murderer and you smash someone's car window, jump in and hotwire it to escape, you're liable for all the damage you caused. If someone else is being chased by said bad guy, and you're the Rambo, and you're the guy that comes, you come in with your cape, and you break a car, and you hotwire, and you say to the guy being chased, hop in, and you speed off, and you're the getaway driver to save this guy's life, we don't hold you liable. Same scenario, basically. But if you do it for yourself, you got to pay. Do it for someone else, we suspend the liability. You with me? That becomes the second exception to the law. The law is violate the property to save a life, but you're on the hook for payment. Not if you're a king, not if you're a Good Samaritan. Phil.
Yeah, okay. Let me give you another example.
Yeah.
Even more relevant. The hostage is being held by Hamas.
Yeah.
So we have a very big conundrum, obviously. They could get the hostages back if Israel pulled out, let Hamas come back to power. They would probably get all hostages back, but they would be endangering the state of Israel for future October 7th.
Right.
So if you don't, basically surrender to Hamas, more likely hostages will die.
Right. So to me, that's an even more difficult question, because that's almost a question of life versus life. Right. This is not because we're almost sticking with like life versus property, but there's a liability in the property, or maybe not if you're a king or a Good Samaritan. But your question is even more difficult, and maybe the impossible question to answer, because I haven't yet heard a good answer to that one, which is how do you balance short-term, long-term, or the immediate need of the hostages versus the long-term need of the security and safety and security of the large profit. So that's a complicated issue, and I'll just say I'm probably glad that I don't have to make that, because that seems like an impossible choice between those two. But let's leave that aside for right now. The rule is life obviously supersedes money. So you can steal, you can damage, whatever it is, if you're saving a life. If you're a king, but then you're liable. If you're a king, you're not liable. If it's not you, your life that's being saved. If it's someone else's, you're a Good Samaritan. Then we say you rip up the bill for the Good Samaritan. Everyone with me so far? Make sense? Yeah.
So maybe not point, but does the person that the Good Samaritan was helping also not liable?
He didn't do anything. It's a good question. You're asking a great question. I didn't address it. It's a great question. Let me just mention, Bobby's question is, one second, hold on. Someone's car window is smashed. That's $300 maybe? I don't know. $300. And then they had to pop out the ignition thing to hotwire, or they damaged that to get that patched up. So now you're talking about like $800 to $1,200 worth of damage to some fourth party guy's car. Some innocent dude's car just got slightly trashed. And he's like, I'm so glad this was part of the getaway. This is amazing. But I really need the money down to repair my car. So he goes to the guy who did the damage, like, well, Good Samaritan. Well, I'm not going to go to the bad guy. Maybe I should, but whatever. So he goes to the guy who was saved. The guy who was saved is like, I didn't actually break it. I just sat there while I was being rid of. So in that case, no one has to pay for it. I mean, could you hold the bad guy liable? Could we add that on top of this thing? I don't think so. Because the bad guy can say, I didn't do the damage. You're going to say that I caused the damage to happen? That's what we call grama. That's not like direct. That's indirect.
It's pretty direct. I mean, the guy was running.
You know what? Far be it from me to defend scare a guy in mask. I'm just now assuming there was a mask involved just for the, situation, for the drama. Far be it from me to excuse that guy and to be like, dude in the mask, bad guy is like, I'm just saying he didn't actually smash the window of the car. I'm just saying. The guy whose car it is takes the loss. This is just the unfortunate reality. So if it's a king, you're out of luck. If it's your barley stacks and the king is like, we got to do this, you're out of luck. If it's a good Samaritan that does it, you're out of luck. Go.
It's interesting that this is in the Jewish law, because I remember when I came from Israel and I was getting accustomed to the laws of the land, it was interesting to see how a lot of time people here won't lend a hand to some crime that is happening because nobody wants to get sued. If they can't do something even to the bad guy, then he can turn around and sue them.
Right.
Yet in Israel, whenever something like that, 20 million people jump on the guy and nobody is liable. There was, I don't remember.
Good Samaritans, they waive everything.
Good Samaritan was actually liable for something that they did if they were saving somebody else's property, life, not even life, just property as well.
Yeah, good point. So maybe Israel's a little bit more aligned with this idea. Let's take a look. Yeah.
That if you help someone like doctors and nurses,
right, and something goes wrong, right? There's no liability. Yeah, there are good Samaritans because of loss.
And things they did get in trouble. Or,
right. There was initially good Samaritans were paying the price. In other words, the legal system of our country or various jurisdictions caught up to 1,500-year-old Talmudic law that had this on the books, literally 1,500 years, 1,250 years before the United States of America was even a thing. The Talmud said, of course, if you're Bava Kama 117b, it's right there for everyone to see. Of course, if someone's saving someone else, you don't give them a bill. No one would ever help. There's no bills if you're helping someone. Helping yourself, yeah, you got to pay it. All right. So now we have the rule and two exceptions. Here's the third exception. And this is going to be the most difficult. It's going to be the most difficult because you got to think in a very, you got to maintain, I don't know what the right word is, not a sensitive mind in like an emotionally sensitive way, but like be able to differentiate between two very similar cases. Okay, here we go. Eve, text number 5. Before you read this, I got to say this. We're going to have two cases of a ship. The two cases are similar, but as we'll see, they are very different. This text is coming from the Code of Jewish Law, and this is going to be our third exception, the most difficult, but also the most just legendary. Take it away.
If a ship is about to be capsized due to the overwhelming weight on the ship and one of the passengers throws some of the luggage overboard to save the ship, he is exempt from reimbursing the owner of the luggage, as we see the luggage as a rodent, sewer of life. The passenger who throws the luggage overboard does a great mitzvah since he saves lives. However, this is only true if someone overloaded the ship with his luggage. However, if the ship is not overloaded, but ominous waves of water are threatening to sink the ship during a storm, one who throws off some of the luggage in order to lighten the ship will be liable.
Now it's getting complicated. Now it's getting complicated. 1 second. Let's break this down. All right. To sit right back and I'll tell a tale. Gilligan's Island. All right, here we go. We have a tale of two ships. The first case is where I'm gonna dramatize the case. It's consistent with what we just read, but let me just make it like obviously a little bit dramatic. 50 passengers on the ship, and everyone is told beforehand you can bring 2 suitcases. Somebody comes on with 10. Big trunks, big trunks. 2 people are holding the trunks, 10 of them. All right, fine. It sets sail, and slowly, lat, you see that the ship can't handle the weight. And so they're like, okay, so we got to lighten this ship. So who do they turn to? Mr. Heavy Packer. And they say, all right, your stuff is going overboard. They take the luggage. Chuck! Didn't help. Chuck more. Keep on throwing stuff overboard. And then the ship is lightened and everyone's life is saved. It's a miracle. Maybe it's not a miracle, right? But it's Baruch Hashem, salvation is here. Great. Now the guy with all the stuff turns to the guy that threw it overboard and said, all right, well, how are we going to do this? Cash or money order? like what's the plan, Stan? Forget me, my possession. You get nothing, bro. It's your fault that we were in danger. The way this is the first half of text 5. The halachic language, if you notice, is the reason for the exemption on reimbursement in this case is because we perceive the luggage, that extra luggage, as a rodef. What's a rodef? Rodef literally means pursuer or chaser. Someone told me this morning by the daytime class, is that like rodef shalom, like in synagogues, rodef shalom? Yes. But no, not in a negative way. Rodef shalom means a pursuer of peace. But rodef in halacha typically means a pursuer of life, meaning a threat to life. In this case, the first case of text 5, let's break it down for a second. What's the cause of the danger? What's the cause of the ship potentially sinking and everyone on board dying? What's the cause of the danger? Too much weight. And which weight was the extra weight? This guy's weight. Right. Now, one second. You might say, well, no, it's everyone's weight is extra. It's either the last guy who put the stuff on, or it's the one that overloaded more than. Look, if you notice in the text 5, after the 3 dots, like a little bit past the middle, this is only true if someone overloaded the ship with his luggage. Then you have a clear party to blame. There's a clear problem. Luggage. This luggage is the problem. If this luggage is not on, we are not in danger. The only danger is because of the luggage. We are eliminating the danger. Don't tell me about liability. We got rid of the threat. When you eliminate a rodef, there's no liability, right? It's like shooting a missile out of the sky. I'm not paying for your missile now. I shoot your missile out of the sky. I'm getting a bill from Iran for $25,000. Not happening, buckaroo, right? You're telling me that I destroyed your luggage? Your luggage was a missile. Your luggage was a bullet. I destroyed a bullet. If you eliminate, liquidate, if you neutralize or eliminate a rodef, there's no liability. That's the beginning of text 5. Next case of text 5 is a little bit different. In this case, no one overloaded the ship. No one did anything wrong. You wouldn't say that the ship is too heavy, too weighted down. You wouldn't say that. However, the ship is out there in the sea. Waves tossing and turning. The captain is there with the little hook thing. The captain is there. And no one knows what to do. The only option at this point is we got to lighten the load. We got to throw luggage overboard. Now, in a normal situation, luggage wouldn't have been a problem. But now with this storm, for whatever reason they determined, we got to throw luggage overboard. They throw someone's luggage overboard. And then, Baruch Hashem, it works. And the guy says, all right, I'm glad we're all safe, but who's going to pay me for my luggage? Probably the guy who threw it overboard.
That up the same as a good Samaritan trying to save everybody's life.
Good question.
Take up
No.
a collection. They should all pay.
Okay. But the question is there liability? But let me address your question in a second, because you're asking an excellent question. But before that question, let's present the law. The law is, in this case, the luggage is not the rodef. The luggage is not the threat. What's the threat in the second case? Storm. The storm is a rodef. You want to shoot the storm down? Go for it. Because hey, knock that, no, whatever that means. The luggage is not the rodef. You didn't eliminate the rodef. You threw someone's luggage overboard, and therefore there is liability. In the first case, there's no liability if you throw overboard the luggage that was weighing down the ship. In the second case, the issue is not the luggage, the issue is the storm. You want to save yourself from the storm by throwing over luggage? Yes, you need to do that, but then you're also going to be on the hook. Now, who pays it? How do they divide it? You can figure that out. Now, 1 second. David's question. Very good question. He's like, 1 second. Isn't this under the rubric of, isn't this contained under the law, the exemption of the Good Samaritan? The answer is no, because the person who threw over the luggage was also on the ship. Turns out he was saving his own life. He was saving his own life. If it was someone that came in via helicopter, whose life wasn't at risk, he's like, all right, I got this. We're going to airlift and throw off luggage. He would be exempt. But if you're on that ship and you're the one actively throwing this stuff over, you're saving everybody. You're also saving your own life at that point, which means we don't have to incentivize. The whole reason behind the rationale behind the Good Samaritan exemption is we want to incentivize people to step up. You don't need to be incentivized if your life's on the line. We don't need to give you a financial exemption to motivate you. You're very motivated by your life being at risk, which means you got to pay up. Understand this. In both cases, throwing over the luggage saved the day. But in one case, it's the rodef. In the other case, it's not the rodef. Now, you're saying, no, but even in the second case, it's the rodef, because as long as the ship is heavy, it's going to go down. Again, rodef doesn't mean that. Rodef means it's the epicenter, it's the eye of the storm, meaning it's the core, it's the center of the threat. David, jump in. Oh, David.
Rabbi.
Morris, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Who's responsible for allowing that luggage to get on the ship?
Guy snuck it on.
Is there any liability?
Let's say he snuck it on. No one was looking.
That's different.
Yeah, I'm just saying we can think of a case where no one else is to blame. No one else. It's completely his liability. David Block, did you want to say something or no? I thought I heard, but maybe I didn't.
No.
Okay.
I'm good for once.
Also, though, in the first case, you're throwing over the person who brought on too much luggage.
Right.
In the second case, you're just throwing over some random person's luggage.
Right. The key idea, though, that is correct. The key idea is, in one case, there's a rodef. There's a clear threat, and that threat you're eliminating. Therefore, there's an exemption. In the second case, the luggage is not the threat.
My point is, though, that it wouldn't matter if the person brought too much, or like you just throw over anyone's luggage in that situation.
Right. Right.
But isn't also the situation of not wanting to disincentivize somebody to take a drastic action to save lives? So maybe okay, nobody brought up extra bags, but but the ship is clearly too low in the water. But somebody says, well, we have to lighten the weight of the ship. We're all going to die. And so he starts throwing stuff off. But maybe that was the wrong conclusion.
In that case, there would be liable.
Now you disincentivize him to take the initiative to throw the bags off because he's going to be tagged with the cost.
I hear you. All right, we got to figure that out. It's a good question. Right. Hey, why don't you throw over the stuff? Right. Before it's done, they're like, oh no, we should have paid the $100. Good. It's a good question. We would, obviously this is the general rule. We have to as it plays out, we got to, figure out how it would be so actionable and who's going to, and what other formulas have to put in place. But in general, we have now our third exception. So I'm going to state the rule again. It's all review. It's all chazar. We're repeating it. We have the rule and now 3 exceptions. And then we're perfect timing. We can get into our case studies. So what's the rule? The rule is that to save a life, steal, break, damage, burn, whatever it takes, save a life and property, right? Destroy property to save a life. Great. Perfect. Amazing. But you got to reimburse. That's the rule. Exception number 1, if you're the king. Exception number 2, if you're a good Samaritan. Exception number 3, if it is the rodef. 3 exceptions. 1 rule, 3 exceptions. To better understand, to better work with it, We're going to go through a series of examples, a series of cases. And you'll see as we go through it, everything's going to hopefully crystallize very clear. So let's go. Let's go into, forget the learning exercise.
Could I ask just one question?
Yeah.
What if it was a sailor who took an order from his captain?
That's too complex of a question. I want to present the rules without getting into the nitty-gritty. Present the rules because otherwise it's going to get too complicated. So let's go case study 1, the case of the burning building. Here we go. Again, everyone's going to chime in together on this. You are taking a walk. Oh, let me make sure. Is everyone on the same page here? Case study 1? On the unmarked page, whatever it is? Okay. Case study 1, the case of the burning building. You are taking a walk and see smoke coming out of a building. A child is screaming from the 2nd floor, Le'aleinu, God forbid. You can't enter the house because the house is locked, so you break a window and manage to open the front door and save the child's life. You be the judge. Are you liable for the broken window? Under what law are you not liable? Excellent. You guys, I'm quelling. The nachas, you have no idea. Everything that was said is correct. There is no financial liability because exception number 2, we have a good Samaritan here. Clear? Case study 2. The case of the swerving car. You are driving your car when, to your horror, you realize that you have lost your brakes. In a desperate attempt to avoid a fatal accident, you instinctively turn off the road into someone's private property, slamming into the side of the house and causing substantial damage to the exterior wall. That's the case. I'll say it again. Driving, brakes fail, turn the wheel, slam into someone's house. Substantial damage to the exterior wall, $50,000 in damage, let's just say. 20,000, 10,000, whatever. You be the judge. Question number 1, do you have to pay for the damage?
Yes.
Why yes?
It's the rule.
Because, it's the rule. It's the default rule. Because you are saving whose life? Your own life. You don't want to hit something else. So you just went for the house, whatever, however that works. Well, hold on. Wait. That's question number 2. Hold that. Good. But in the basic case, you're protecting yourself by taking someone else's wall out. So you're allowed to do that, but then you have to pay for it. That's the rule. Well stated. Question 2. Is the case any different if you're trying to avoid hitting a child who ran in front of your moving vehicle, causing damage in the process? Imagine, God forbid, a kid runs out of the middle of the road. And so as not to, God forbid, strike the child, you swerve the car and hit the guy's wall, causing the same damage. What would we say then? Your brakes, either way, they work, they didn't work, it doesn't matter.
Good Samaritan.
Working, eventually you're going to have to go into the wall.
Yeah, but even so, okay, fine, let's say the brakes were working. Okay, whatever, we'll make it easier. Yeah, what do you think? Liability or no liability?
No.
Why not?
Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan. Excellent. Good. We got to speak. We got to get the right language, right? So in the case of the burning house, you smash the window, you rescue the child, you do the photo op, you don't have to pay for the window. Good Samaritan. We waive it. There's a bill, rip it up. In the case where you're at risk and you smash someone's house, you got the bill. In a case where you're protecting the life of a child, so you swerve out of the way, again, we rip up the bill. Good Samaritan. Case study 3. Let's keep on going. This is how we put it into practice. By the way, what amazes me is how, we think about modern legal systems and all of the cases and whatever, you realize, like, how much of it came from Gemara? How much of it came from the Talmud? I know I asked that question weirdly. A lot of it came from the Talmud. Case study 3, in case I was vague on that. Case study 3, the case of the drop books. A little bit of a weird case, but let's do it. You are delivering on behalf of a friend a package of valuable books to someone, as though everyone has valuable books to be delivered. Okay, here we go. On the way, you notice a shady-looking character following you. I don't know why I'm laughing at that, but it just described kind of funny. He seems dangerous. So you start running, but the shady character is in better shape than you, especially since he has no load weighing on his back the way you do. In order to save your life, you decide to drop the load of books and run as fast as you can. You escape the danger and decide after a while to go back in order to recover the package of books. Unfortunately, they are gone. So again, hold on, before you turn the page, I'm gonna just say it again. So there you are. You got like this huge bag or whatever it is. You're schlepping a bunch of books, valuable books. Let's put the value at $1,000 worth of rare books. And there you are. Bad guy comes. You run. You can't run fast enough. You drop the books. You take off. You come back. Books are gone. Now let's turn the page. You be the judge. Question number 1. Do you have to pay for the books?
Yes. Yes.
Saving your own.
Because you're saving your own life.
It's like the boat with the
It's like the boat
when there was not overload.
when there was no overload, even though here's the case of overload, but it's like the boat when there's no overload, meaning, 1 second, let's break it down. Are the books a rodef? Why are the books not a rodef? What does rodef mean? The source of the danger. What's the source of the danger? The bad guy. That's the key. If you have that, you have it all. You have the whole Torah. I'm kidding. But you have tonight, you have that. That was the tricky thing. Remember, you said, no, the books are a rodef because the books are going to make me get caught. The books are not a rodef. Rodef means the source of the danger. The books are not harming you. Bad guy chasing you is harming you. Do not get those mixed up. Oh, the books are preventing your escape. Sure, that doesn't make it a rodef. Two different concepts. Okay. We only exempt you when you're eliminating, destroying, losing the rodef. In this case, the books are not the rodef, which means that it will revert back to the regular standard case, the rule, which is you are liable for the books. That's a bummer. Bad guy chasing you. But it's like any case. You want to save your life on someone else's dime? Sure. And then you got to cover the bill. That's just how it works. If someone got lost in the middle of the forest and is dying of hunger and sees a cabin up ahead and crawls to the cabin, breaks the door, steals cans of peas and goes to town and then eats them. And it's a miracle and it's amazing. It might make the newspaper. You still got to pay for the door and the peas. Why not? As one of the texts said, it's no longer an emergency. You're no longer under duress. Now you pay. What's the excuse now not to pay? Well, King David didn't have to pay. No one else cannot pay. And again, okay. Now let's do the twist. Question number 2 under that, you be the judge header there. Would the outcome be different if the shady character caught you and told you at gunpoint to hand over the books?
Yes.
This now becomes the wrinkle.
Whatever that was.
Yes, the rodef. Let's break this down. Why? If the bad guy says, hand over the books or you're gone, you're a goner, the books now become the rodef. Why? Why do the books become the rodef? Still the bad guy, still the bad guy. Because the bad guy just made this about the books. That becomes part of the bad guy's bad guy. In other words, it's all wrapped in. Before, the books were incidental to the bad guy. The bad guy was the bad guy, and the books were a weight on your shoulders. That has nothing to do with the bad guy. But now the bad guy says, give me those books. Now that's part of the bad guy's targeting. The books are now the source of the threat. If you have those books, he's going to kill you. You see that? Because of the books. Not incidental to the slowness of your running because of the books. The books are now the source of the problem, which means you can hand over the books and you're not liable. Simple example. Let me give you a real world example. God forbid, someone goes out for an event and they borrow a friend's jewelry and they're wearing a $2,000 diamond bracelet and a $3,000 diamond necklace and some earrings. You have $10,000 of borrowed jewelry. God forbid, bad guy comes over and says, with a gun, give me the jewelry. You hand over the jewelry. Are you liable to pay back $10,000 to your friend?
Yes.
Not according to this.
If we consider the jewelry, because it's now targeted to be the rodef, then you're not liable. Now, where do we see this? Look at text number 7. Look at text number 7. David, did you read? David, please read text number 7.
If a ruthless ruler forces someone to reveal the belongings of a friend, that person is exempt from repaying the loss because it was an act done under life-threatening circumstances.
Isn't that the case here? Ruthless ruler, bad guy, says, hey, give me that stuff. Right? Belong to someone else. Give me that jewelry. Whether they know or not who belongs to, they're targeting that thing. That becomes the rodef. The jewelry becomes the threat. Because you're wearing the jewelry, now your life is at risk. So you know what? I'm giving up that jewelry, and I'm not under. Now I'm off the hook. It's a terrible situation, but there's no liability in that case. Yeah.
Sorry, what it means?
Pursuer.
So, in the case with the ship tied to the dock.
Yeah. Are you saying the case that we had initially?
Right.
Yeah.
Like comparing it to this case, the ship had to tie to the dock to save itself. I mean,
yeah.
Let's say presumably.
Right.
Say the weather, all of a sudden a hurricane can hit. No one can get there, okay? And they have to stay tied to the dock, so they're liable for it still.
Correct.
And in this situation, it's. I mean.
In other words, it's like this. You're allowed to do whatever it takes. You destroy property, you can hand over property, you can burn property, you can eat property to save a life. The question is, do you have to then pay for it afterwards? After when the storm is calm, do you have to write a check? And the answer is typically yes, but there's some exceptions. If you are a king, if you are a good Samaritan, and if the thing that was destroyed is the rodef, the dock was not the rodef. The storm is the rodef, the dock is not the rodef. In this case, the jewelry would be the rodef. If it's targeted, the jewelry is the rodef. This leads us to our case study. The case study from the Holocaust. It's a true story that came before the rabbinical court in Tel Aviv. Take a look. I'll read this. Text 6. Actually, you know what, Phil, you read it. Text number 6, please.
During World War II, Benjamin and Herman Gross each hid a large sum of money in different places and remained after the war. When the Nazis captured Herman, he pointed out to the soldiers the area where Benjamin's money was hidden so that they would spare him, Herman. After the war, Benjamin sued his brother Herman before the rabbinical court in Tel Aviv for the value of the treasure he had revealed. Benjamin argues that Herman should have used his own money in order to save his life. Herman does not deny the fact that he revealed his brother's hiding place, but claims that the SS men had already been told by an informer about Benjamin's money and that they had asked him directly for the location of Benjamin's hiding place. There was no mention made of Herman's own money, thus his life depended upon revealing the location of Benjamin's money, and he should therefore be exempt from repayment.
Listen to this case. Thank you for reading it. It's a crazy case. Two brothers. This is a real case. This came before the Bet Din in Tel Aviv. The head Bet Din. Crazy case. I'm going to summarize it quickly. You have two brothers. Each of them buries the treasure. They come over to one of them, Herman. We don't know what happened because it's, he claims something. But here's what ends up happening is that he reveals his brother's treasure. His brother's hiding place for his brother's treasure. And now, after the war, they both survive. Miracle of miracles. Complicated family dynamic, sounds like. Because now you have one survivor brother suing the other survivor brother for the treasure that the other one gave up. He says, why did you point out my treasure? You could have your own treasure. You gave up my treasure to save your life? I'm glad you're alive, brother, but give me back my treasure. You got to pay up for that for the treasure. You be the judge. Truth is, it's very simple. It all depends on what happened. which we might never know objectively, but it depends on what happened. If the SS men, if the Nazis said to Herman, give us money or else, and he said, over there, point out his brother's stash, then he's liable. Why? Because you're allowed to save yourself with someone else's money. You're allowed to, but the rule is you then have to pay it back. Is that money a rodef? No, because it wasn't specified. It only becomes a rodef if it's part of the threat. Here, the threat here it was money. Well, you're giving your own money. You chose that money, okay, but you have to pay it back. But if they said, we heard your brother has money, show us where that money is, or you're gone, that money becomes part of the rodef. That becomes the threat. The threat is because of the money. If not for the money, they wouldn't have come for him. If not for the jewelry, they would have done the robbery. It becomes now part of the core of the threat, which means if you eliminate the threat, there's no liability.
Although it would have been just easy to still point out your own money because.
So now it becomes a question. So now it becomes a question. Oh, perfect. So what Bobby's asking is, but still, be a stand-up person and point out your own stash and say, that's my brother's stash. Imagine you're holding someone's phone. Same case as Julie, but I just decided to modify it. Imagine you're holding someone's cell phone. Someone comes up and says, give me that phone. Armed robbery. You say, you know what? Look, do me a favor. It's not your phone. Let me give you $500. Don't take the phone. Are you obligated to do that? Same thing. Herman is not obligated to give his own stash. You understand what? Same story. Someone targets a cell phone that's not your phone. You say, no, take my money. That's very nice. I hope it's a very good friend, and I hope you'll be friends forever because of that. You're not obligated to do that. Herman is, if it's true that they asked for the brother's stash that they heard about, Herman has no obligation to say, no, let me give you my own, even if he doesn't say it, but just replaces it with his own. He has no obligation to do that. They were targeting that stash. He gave up that stash. It's the rodef. He threw the luggage overboard. No liability. This was the ruling of the court in Tel Aviv. And they said, based on the testimony of the only one who was there, Herman, who's repeating the story as that they had said, we heard your brother has a stash of money or whatever it was, stash somewhere. Show us where it is. Tell us where it is, or else you're gone. That's how he presented the story. They said, there's no liability. Why? Based on the third exception of rodef. Make sense? Now let's go back to our original cases. All good so far? Good. It landed. We docked the ship. All right, let's go back to the original case. I have to remind myself honestly what the original cases were, so I'm going to refer to my handy dandy sheet. Okay, good. Oh, we just spoke about this, the boat. So we just spoke about the boat. What happened with the boat? Storm, unfortunate storm, sudden storm, whatever it is. The boat's like, we're not going out there. That's crazy. We're not putting our life at risk. We're going to stay right here. Smash for a few hours. Wrecks the dock. The dock owner says, you got to pay up. What do you guys say? You're allowed to save your life. You're allowed to save your, do whatever you want. Here's the bill. We take installments, right? You still have to pay up. No. I'm a king. You're not a king. Wait. I'm a good Samaritan. No, you're not. You're protecting your own stuff. You're protecting your own interests. You don't need any incentive to do that. Wait, but it's a rodef. The dock is not a rodef. There's no danger from the dock. The danger is from the storm. It fails on all three counts. Therefore, liability. Easy. Next case. San Francisco. Fire in Frisco. Not that Frisco. And so the city says, here's the Chaim, listen up. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to demolish all these houses, or maybe even just one house, because we got to create a buffer. We can't have it spreading one to the other. We got to clear some space. The fire dies down so we can contain it. I'm sorry, Get out of the way. We're bulldozing this right now. He's like, no, my house. Sir, you have to move. And they bulldozed it. Now he's like, you got to pay up. What do you think?
No liability, it's like the king.
One might argue that. I might argue that as well. I don't know for sure, because again, I don't know that any rabbi ever matched up these things, but based on the principles, right? Or you can maybe even say that the government is like a good Samaritan in this case. Maybe it's really based on the Good Samaritan that the king is absolved, because the king's typically acting on behalf of the entire kingdom. Maybe it's because of that. Maybe he doesn't need the incentive, but either way, one might argue that the city is actually not liable. Eminent domain, a king's rule. The eminent domain, you would have to, the city does pay, so maybe that's the wrong language. But the government, if you liken the government to that position of the king, meaning that authority position, one might argue there's no liability. I would probably, if you were to ask me, I would probably put into that category. I'll tell you soon. If you want, I can read the rulings, have them on my phone, because all these came to the courts. The third case, when police break your door. Oded, a case that hit close to home. You told us before. Real case. This is not even a theoretical. Livnat versus City of Atlanta, 2010. That's our new case study right here. Huh?
We don't have the money to pay that.
All right. Any pro bono lawyers? All right. So what would we say? So let's figure this out. So the police come in, guns blazing, and they cause all this damage. Well, are they the king? Someone asked it before. Is that right? You asked that, right? Would the police be considered like the king with that exemption? Either represent, maybe a little bit. King David was told, burn down whatever you need. Burn down the stacks. You got to get to the bad guys.
Send people to
Yeah, you got to burn down the stacks. You got to get to the bad guys. Maybe it's under the government king rule of law. Maybe it could be. But I asked you a question. What if they burned down all the stacks?
What if they went into a house they thought was a drug dealing house and busted up all the walls and ripped up all the floors?
But what if they did excessive damage? And these are good questions. I don't know the answers. I have the questions. I don't necessarily have all the answers. Right. Oh, good. That's another point. Well, man, but then we could just modify the case, even if it's not this original case. Jenny's saying a good point. Well, who said that anyone's life was in danger? They're trying to catch a bad guy. That's a good point. Also, in your case, it wasn't life. It wasn't life, right? So, that's a good point, because our cases are really life versus property. Maybe that doesn't fit into that category. So we'll just have to we'll have to find another case where somebody had, killed someone or was suspected of killing someone and hid out somewhere, and then the police came in, battering ram, shot up the place, and now the owner, because that's not his house, the owner's like, hello, like, I used to live here. Like, what just happened to my house? And it's destroyed. So we might exempt it under the king exception. We might say that police are good Samaritans. That if the police were told that they would have, and that was even the argument here. The city argued that police officers need to act without hesitation when pursuing dangerous suspects. If they had to worry about lawsuits every time they broke down a door, public safety could be at risk. Right, which would be dangerous. We might not want that. Yeah.
I guess the best song, if a person went into the house and was holding the occupant gun,
right. Yes.
The cops go in and damage. That's sort of.
They might be now the literal good Samaritans to rescue the hostages from that situation. Excellent. And we might say the same if we apply it to Israel, right? Trying to rescue hostages. Some collateral damage with property, right? Obviously, the right to correlation here is property. Not held on the hook. Now, Now we might say that, like, well, what if the police went overboard in the example, whatever in the cases, and they literally destroyed everything? Then what? Okay, then we might say maybe they went too far, or what? But then the question is, whose size was too far in the moment? So the point is not to actually necessarily drill down and like come to a psak, come to a ruling in these cases. It's more to understand that what the Talmud discusses literally, without exaggeration, 1,500 years ago, plays out in real life all the time. And those principles can go a long way in helping us make reasoned, clear decisions in otherwise seemingly very complicated cases that pull our emotions in different directions. So we might feel a tug or a sympathy to one party or the other, but the Talmud, say the Gemara, the Talmud, no, the Gemara, the Talmud, right? Jewish law gives us a reasonable, sensible, logical, and grounded framework. I want to end with one idea, a spiritual point to kind of like maybe a point of inspiration. What we've seen is that a lot of it in the third exception of Rodef depends on the intention and what's really the driving force behind the damage. The same luggage is thrown overboard. If it's driven by a storm, there is liability. If it's driven by the weight of the luggage that you threw over, there's no liability, right? Depending on what's the catalyst. So the same we might say in our spiritual service. The last two texts, I'll read them quickly. Actually, you know what, Helene, if you don't mind, read text 8 and text 9.
Yeah, text 8. A mitzvah without a mental initiative cannot ascend the body.
And text 9 as well.
Prayer without mental concentration is like a body without a soul.
Thank you. In a world in which intentionality is so important and motive is so important, and the driving force, what is the initiator of the action, right? Is it from a storm? Is it from the weight? That's going to make a big difference if you're on the hook for the bill. Are you doing the mitzvah with the right intention or with the wrong intention? Are you praying with the right intention or without maybe any intention at all? And so this reminds us that in life, it's important not only to do the right thing, but also to have a healthy perspective and a healthy intention, a kavanah, when we do it, and that helps our mitzvahs and our prayers rise ever higher. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for lesson number 2 of You Be the Judge. You guys were great. I want to say you guys were really fantastic. The discussion was phenomenal, and I love the participation. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, perhaps the best of them all. We discussed burdens of proof. What are the standards of evidence in Jewish law? It's such a complicated sugya topic. I don't say complicated. It's so involved. You might be familiar with the idea of 2 eyewitnesses. We're going to get into this next week. We're going to talk about circumstantial evidence. We'll talk about cases. For example, and it's come up many times in Jewish history, and even in modern times, in 9/11, where, let's say, a husband is missing, presumed deceased, but there's no body. Can the wife remarry based on what we might call circumstantial evidence? What are the burdens of proof and evidence within halacha, within a bet din? All coming up next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. By the way, if you're a true crime fan like I am, yes, that's a thing. Then you will probably be aware of a case, a trial going on right now in Boston, of this woman, this girlfriend of the cop, and his body was found in the snow, and they said that she hit him. Are you guys not familiar with this? All right. You guys got to get on these stories. Anyway, there's a big, huge trial. Cover up, not cover up. It's crazy. Circumstantial evidence, some physical evidence, but mainly circumstantial. That's going on right now. Then you have, oh, you got to look it up yourself. Right? It's way too complicated. It involves drinking and snow and 4 a.m. searches and conspiracies and cover-ups and cell phones being requested for evidence and then ending up being destroyed. It's very complicated. Depending on which rabbit hole you go down, you get a different narrative. There's also the trial going on right now that's just starting in Moscow, Idaho, with the murder of the 4 college students. And that's also based on somewhat circumstantial evidence. And so we have all these cases, these real cases that are like the hot cases and, in the media and the news that people are following. And, you can read up a lot of Reddit threads on this stuff. And the question is, what might halacha say about this? Come back next week. You'll enjoy it. Thank you all for being part of the conversation. Thank you for coming out tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure. Deborah, good to see you. I didn't say hi before. Hope you enjoyed it. Always great to see you. All right, good. And Ray, good to see you. Mom, good to see you.
Yeah, it
All
was
right.
a great class.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sorry,
I
I was late. I'm a little under the weather. I've had a
Oh, I'm
flu or
sorry.
something
Sorry
or
for that.
another, but
Well,
I
feel better.
got to the most important part. It was very good.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm
Always
glad.
a good class. Thank you.
Feel
My
better.
pleasure.
Thank
Feel
you.
good. Take care, everybody.